So, good morning to the listeners, or whenever you're listening to this interview with Luke Hamill, who's my co host of the Central London Property Meet. Luke, I'm really delighted that you're chairing the panel this coming month. It's a really special time for me. It's my birthday the day after, so I'm inviting many past speakers, past guests back to the particular meeting. Um, and I've taken your advice on the topic, which is focus on strategy. So that's what the panel discussion's about. The likes of Nicole Bremner, Anil Mahanal, who's the accountant, commercial residential investor, and also we have the amazing Nicholas Marshall and Richard Bowser. Nicholas, just to let listeners know, is a developer investor, recently completed a 17-unit development in Caterham, Surrey. So you notice there's a certain shift towards the developer market rather than the traditional landlord HMO investor. Luke, we were discussing off air about what the situation is, particularly tax implications, and that's why it's so important to have someone like Anil there who can answer those questions on tax. And it's as we were discussing, Luke, you said it's not all rosy. We don't want to say it's recently there's been some reviews in the courts which haven't quite gone the way people were hoping. Is that right, Luke? Have you heard about that?
Followed it, no.
Oh, okay. So I'm not the expert on this by any stretch, but the initial appeal, I don't think's been successful. But what you said you had a conversation yesterday, Luke, with your accountant, and do you want to just share that with the listeners and how that's going to impact?
Yeah, hi, Brendan. It doesn't surprise me about the review. I mean, it's quite a lot of political storm behind the sort of moving towards taking the interest element, allowing the interest. So it's going to have seismic implications for investors. So you really need to understand this, and you won't be able to use debt, offset your debt, anything like the extent you could have done, which basically allowed so many investors to build up large portfolios and reduce the tax on that. So now basically we'll be getting, it's almost like having twice your costs, the tax that you'll be paying on top of that. So it will leave most investors without making any money. Many investors are actually losing money. And then many people will just need to give back the properties, and they'll be able to see a lot more properties for first-time buyers perhaps, or they can't afford them, which case people will be buying them companies. But either way, it's probably bad news for tenants. I think this is why we're hearing a lot about rent increases and sort of choices for tenants, that flexibility. So who knows, Brendan? It's times, certainly times are ahead. So perhaps that's why we're looking more at the development panels and that sort of expertise.
Sure. What would be some of the key questions on the evening we'll be looking at? So we're focused on strategy going into 2017. For me personally, I've noticed the increase of build-to-rent interest, certainly. I noticed the interest in developer as well. I've also noticed, interestingly, Luke, service accommodation. I don't have anyone specifically on service accommodation on the evening of the 26th. I do have, though, at my other meet at Wandsworth, the Gospodoff brothers, whose focus is on service accommodation. So for me personally, this year I've noticed that trend, interest levels. But what would be some of the key questions or key takeaways from the 26th of October?
I suppose we just want to know about how the tax implications will affect these areas as well. Interest, is it? I mean, it's allowable for businesses at the moment, but specifically on property, there's been talk for a while now that will this continue to be allowed? The build to rent is, how is this the interest allowed? Is it different for institutions? Limited company at the moment, yes, but on property, don't really know, Brendan. So it's there, need to come on, keep educating ourselves as things keep changing. So.
So we're looking at developer market. We're looking at maybe the movement away from being a traditional landlord, and the government is encouraging people to move it into a more professional type industry as such. How has that impacted you personally, Luke? And the evening is, yes, about the panel, but it's also about yourself as well. So how's that impacted you this year? Have you looked at things differently?
Yeah, definitely. Just I've reduced my sort of growth forecast. Just sort of taking stock, holding. Just step back from some purchases, step back from some developments. Just need to take stock of what's going to happen over the next 2-3 years. So that's really like where I'm at. Almost like just waiting to see.
Okay, so we've got a really experienced panel. So some very experienced people in that panel. I know Richard Bowser, very well, Property Investor News magazine. So
Yeah.
I would say, is in a very special position where he has access to almost all the key events in the UK, access to some of the key people in the UK as well. So he's one of the most respected people in property and profession. So in a way, Luke, we've got a unique opportunity for people to get the most out of this meet, because as you're an investor yourself, you can ask the direct key questions to see where the likes of Nicole and Nicholas are going this year. Have you considered commercial? And we may just touch on commercial in the particular evening meet as well. Where do you see commercial going, Luke, as well? And I was going to say that may be a whole presentation itself. And for the listeners out there who are thinking, look, yes, we do want something dedicated commercial. Well, that's fantastic, because that's what I've got up on my Central London morning meet in November, Central Commercial panel.
Yeah. Hey, Brendan, so I have to say, it's not an error, no anything about. I looked at developing a commercial building, but it didn't go ahead for various reasons. But this is what I've looked at over the last year, probably 4 or 5 developments. One of them was commercial and didn't happen. So the risks, the difference is so different from, I mean, it's all so different from residential investing that I've been doing for the last sort of 10, 15 years, right? Which is just pretty easy once you got your head around it. And the tax changes now, you need to look at different things. But for me, commercial, I don't know much about it, Brendan. So I'm definitely all over the morning meet that you're talking about. Anything I can learn there is useful. But it's all about what we have at Central London Property Network is the opportunity with a panel just to see what happens. And when we get everyone together and the opinions start to come out, that's where it's useful. And I can draw out with those questions, the answers that you all need to know, which is, how are you going to be impacted with the changes that are coming? What can you do to take opportunities and utilize the new opportunities that are there? Because, it is balance. Obviously, as we find there is increasing homelessness, which is a distinct possibility, with a sledgehammer, you come with a new policy reform, right, which knocks out thousands of investors. Suddenly they're not interested. What happens? Well, it's homelessness. You do get more homelessness. Do I find in my HMOs, the government wants to give me, it would be politically very unpopular, but say landlords like myself, they might want to give us loads of bed and breakfast money just to house people from being homeless. I don't know, but there are, in terms of opportunity, I don't see that as an opportunity. I see that as very unfortunate. However, financially, it's a distinct possibility that some landlords could really, really gain. But there'll be a fallout. It might take 6 months, a year, 2 years, who knows. But we've seen it in the past where you had bed and breakfasting homeless people, and we've all heard how profitable that can be. But it's kind of, Brendan, I don't know. I can't see the future. I'm keen to keep networking, keep learning, because
and keen to adapt as well, Luke.
Sorry.
Keen to adapt as well.
Yeah, you've got to be keen to adapt. I think that's the key thing, and that's where you come out, you meet people, you learn something, don't you? You come to an evening. I always learn. I just it's a great opportunity being the host, just to put it together and be known by people. So look forward to seeing more of you there on Wednesday the 26th.
It's sure. So that's Wednesday, 26th of October. It's in Central London. There'll be a link for venue details and so forth below the video. As I say, also Gavin Barrybury presenting as well that particular evening. Plus the amazing Wasim Hawerka from First Alliance Financial Services. And I'm doing a few other little things that evening, like we've got a legal surgery, Ricardo Mapdos Anjos, who will be on hand for any legal questions. Look, just to finally conclude, we've mentioned about tax a lot, and Anna on the evening will have opportunities to answer your questions. I do have a tax workshop coming up in December as well at Anna's office, and you can discover more about that particular workshop on the evening of the 26th of October. So I want to say huge thanks, Luke. We didn't really go into too much detail, but you're a very experienced investor, multi-lets mostly, based in Northamptonshire and also some in the southeast as well, for 14, 15 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. Yep. So, Luke, I just want to say huge thanks. Just to conclude, if people can't come along, is there a way they can connect with you? They can connect with me on Twitter at Brendan_Quinn UK. What's your preferred method of connecting?
Twitter, because it's always on. Don't have to log into it. It's at BeLucky2. So you can find me there, Luke at BeLucky2, or it's the Twitter handle is at BeLucky2 TOO. So I look forward to connect with you, and any questions, look forward to see you on the 26th, Wednesday, the 26th of October.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you to the listeners as well. Thanks. Bye for the moment.
Take care.
Bye-bye.